Hello, wisdom seekers. We're back again for another wonderful lesson in Luke. And yes, today I'm going to talk about the weather a little bit because it's real burry outside. And even if I do the lesson today and you look at it tomorrow or whenever, I think it will still be really burry. So we have an actual really cold, freezy, icy weather out there. And I hope everybody's extra careful when they get out. Hopefully you don't have to get out. But today we start with our prayer board, and I have two wonderful praise reports. The first to me is Zachary. He's had such a hard time, and I know Dorothy and all of the Mealers have been very concerned about him. He was admitted to Texas Children's Hospital, but he has been released, and the blockage has been removed. The ultrasound is clear, and he's now at home. So we're just rejoicing with this news. It's just wonderful, and we're very thankful for this good news. My brother-in-law, Terry, he is back home from his accident last week, successful surgery, and I know he's going to be having some rehab, but the prognosis is good. We have some amazing doctors these days, but we also have some incredible prayer warriors, and I thank you for your prayers and concerns for both of these, Terry and Zachary. So as we start our lesson today, I want to give you a statement and have you finish it. Rules and regulations are meant to be, how would you finish that? How have you heard that finished? You've probably heard that finished to be rules and regulations are meant to be broken. And I hope you heard me correctly, rules and regulations and not commandments, because that's certainly not what I'm talking about. There's a big difference. You know, we do have rules and regulations for a reason, but just like in recent years, just like all of the catastrophic fires in California, we've had horrible tornadoes in the Midwest, we've had flooding, horrible flooding in Houston and Louisiana and other areas. During this time, multiple churches have opened up their doors for these people to come in and get comfort, to live, and to get sustenance, food, while they're trying to navigate where they're going to go, where they're going to live. And to do this, these churches have to toss their rules, their guidelines for what they have for their church campuses, their buildings. They opened up their sanctuaries to have people sleep and eat. All of these guidelines and rules are good guidelines and rules, but they have to be tossed. They have to be broken for compassionate reasons. And today's lesson is a wonderful example of what Jesus is trying to get across to the scribes and Pharisees and to us today. We do have good guidelines, good rules that have been taught to us, but compassion overrules. Compassion at all times. We know that Jesus had a long series of conflict with the religious leader, and usually over their strict adherence and interpretation of the Jewish law. They kept adding and adding rules and regulations. We know that they had the Mishnah law, which was a collection of Jewish oral traditions. It included a section on the Sabbath. It alone had 24 chapters and enumerated 39 activities that were forbidden on the Sabbath. Basically, all of the rules and regulations that they were adding, it almost was going to be that you could not keep everything. It just made everyone feel so downtrodden all the time. And oh goodness, I can't do that, I can't do this, or I might break that, I might break this. It was very constructive on everybody. So we're going to see how this plays out today in this wonderful story in Luke 6. We're going to be in 1 through 11. 1 through 2. On a Sabbath, he passed through the grain fields. His disciples were picking heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands and eating them. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" So here we go. Sabbath day rules, you know, they were some of the strictest that were to be observed and adhered to. The religious leaders, you know, they were always trying to catch Jesus and the disciples doing something wrong. And so as they walked through the grain fields, it explains that the disciples were picking grain heads and then rubbing them between their hands and getting the kernels out to eat for food. And number one, that was something that was a very common practice for people to be walking through these fields. And it was very common for people to pick the heads of grain to eat, but not on a Sabbath. That was considered harvesting and winnowing. The harvesting is plucking, the rubbing and getting the grain was considered winnowing. Nit picking, as far as I'm concerned, but as it was, the interpretations that they had, they were almost being treated as the actual law, and that's where it was getting so dangerous, because they were equating it with the law. And just like the churches who opened up their houses of worship for these compassionate reasons, they had to discard some of their rules, these good rules. But we definitely believe that our church is to be treated as a place of respect. I have a heart for our sanctuary, our beautiful little Benuai sanctuary, that it is treated with the utmost respect. But we also know that it is expected of God that we would toss the rules if a compassionate need comes into play. We can never say we can't help you because this might hurt our building, or no, we don't want you to do that in here because it might hurt the building, and we just can't have it. Compassion rules. Compassion rules. The disciples were hungry. Hunger does not take a holiday on the Sabbath then, nor does it take a holiday on the Sabbath in 2021. So we see that that's what was happening. Compassion was not even considered. And that's the sad thing in a lot of churches, I think, today. We have to remember compassion over rules. Compassion over rules. Jesus answered them, "Haven't you read what David and those who were with him did when he was hungry? How he entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat. He even gave some to those who were with him. Then he told them, the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath." Jesus had answered them, hoping that the Pharisees would understand a greater spiritual truth. He wanted them to see the parallel between the actions of David, a very revered person from the Jews' history. As we well know, everyone in Israel considered David to be the epitome of a man after God's own heart. The phrase, "when he was hungry," apparently qualified David to do what he did, as what the disciples did, their hunger should have mitigated their actions in the grain field. It was not unlawful as far as Jesus was concerned because it was a compassionate use. David was fleeing at the time when he ate this bread. He was fleeing from King Saul. He entered the tabernacle on a Sabbath. He did not reveal his fugitive status. The bread was the bread of the presence. It was the showbread that the priests placed on the golden table. There were 12 loaves prepared every week, representing the 12 tribes. When it was replaced each week, the priest could then take those loaves that were being replaced and they could eat them. It was unlawful for anyone else but the priest to eat it. But the priest Ahimelech, he gave the bread to David, and he could see that David's need was greater than the legalistic prohibition that only the priest could eat the bread. His compassion could see that that overruled the law of that don't eat the bread of the presence for anyone else. So I think that was very forward thinking of Elimelech. Jesus told this story to make a larger point. He was the Son of Man, and he was the Lord of the Sabbath, which asserted his position as being equal to God. He kept telling them who he was, but they wouldn't hear him, nor would they believe him. You know, it's like going in one ear and out the other. They didn't want to believe him, so they wouldn't believe no matter what he said. So now we're going to read 6 through 9. On another Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching. A man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The scribes and Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath so that they could find a charge against him. But he knew their thoughts and told the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand here." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" Now this is a lengthy portion, but there's a lot of meat in this. You see that Luke is continuing on almost his daily counting of what Jesus was doing, and this is another Sabbath. And for the reader, he is explaining that there was a man in the synagogue that had a right hand that was shriveled. This is interesting that it's also noted that the scribes and the Pharisees were watching Jesus closely to see if he would heal this man on the Sabbath. It's almost like they knew this man was in there and that Jesus would feel compassion towards him, and they wanted to know what he would do. They're trying to find a charge against him, and it's known that healing on a Sabbath is considered work on a Sabbath, which of course is strictly prohibited. The religious leaders now have become hostile to Jesus, and they were actively trying to find something to accuse him of doing against Jewish law, and this on the Sabbath. There were other times that they were just finding anything at fault of the Jewish law that he was doing. They cared nothing for the man. They were just wanting, with their devious thoughts, to try to catch Jesus. Now we know that Jesus knew their thoughts. That's nothing new. And he told the man with the shriveled hand to get up. He turned, you could almost see him, he turned to these scribes and Pharisees. I would hate for Jesus to turn to me and ask me a question if I was on the wrong side. He asked him this question: is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save a life or to destroy it? Rabbinical teaching allowed Jews to take action on the Sabbath to preserve life. Jesus' question carried the immediate situation to a much, much higher level. The man in question was not dying. He was not in any urgent need. But at the same time, healing him would be a compassionate thing to do. How much better life he would have. Jesus also knew that if he healed this man tomorrow, there would be no problem. But Jesus is talking about the Sabbath. Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil? He's wanting to teach a better quality of life. It doesn't matter what day it is. Compassion is always a life or death. Compassion isn't always about a life or death issue. They were probably a little embarrassed by the question. You'll notice we don't have a verse that has their response, and I can almost understand why. We know that the man has gotten up, and let's read what happens. After looking around at all of them, he told them, "Stretch out your hand." He did, and his hand was restored. They, however, were filled with rage and started discussing with one another what they might do to Jesus. Obeying Jesus, the man's hand was restored. Healing followed obedience. It was like the paralytic last week. Jesus said, "Get up," and he got up. Healing follows obedience. But we see that there was no joy this time with the scribes and the Pharisees. They were outraged. They discussed now what they actively were going to do to Jesus. They were stepping up their game, weren't they? They knew something had to be done. Their concern for the religious tradition, rules, regulations, and Jesus' challenge to their authority invoked their hatred. Ironically, their evil contrasts dramatically with the good that Jesus did, both of these happening on the Sabbath. Jesus was teaching that the Sabbath was indeed to be a wonderful day of worshiping God. The primary question shouldn't be a negative thing. What shall I refrain from doing? Rather, the question should be, what good can I do on the Sabbath? That makes a lot of difference in how we approach a lot of things in the name of religion, doesn't it? Jesus was trying to get across a new way of experiencing the Sabbath, that of sharing and doing good. We say the Lord's model prayer each Sunday. If you notice, give us this day our daily bread. It is highlighting a we environment. Have you noticed that? It's plural. Give us this day our daily bread. The Lord is wanting me, us, all at Benuite, all we come in contact with. We all want people to have a healthy, balanced, spiritual life that is pleasing to God. But this won't happen if we are consumed with our own agenda and push back and not be givers of our own time and resources. When we're not able to adjust to people that don't look like we do, not even willing to give assistance to people that don't look like we do. You may live close to people that look different than you. Are we even willing to reach out to them? I feel that with the way Benui is with the loving group that we have, and with our outreach programs to the food bank and to our missions. I feel that we do and are loving to people who are different from us. And please don't get me wrong, you know, we all have a tendency to have the Pharisee and the scribe attitude at times. I hate to admit it, but I do, and I do a lot at times, and I have to really, really watch myself on that. It's embarrassing to admit it, but I do. But we see how Jesus wanted to push that envelope with the religious view on right and wrong. This is a whole new way that he was teaching them. And they were just absolutely unwilling to budge against dropping their precious rules and regulations. I don't want to be that stubborn. I want to say, give us this day our daily bread, in the plural, and really mean it, and not just to the ones I love. Don't you want to be that open and compassion over rules, compassion over rules? What a wonderful lesson. Oh goodness, isn't this for our day and time right now in 2021, when you go to the grocery store, or when you drive, or when you go anywhere, when you see that the love that people need right now, if you could just go out and get everyone a big hug. The world needs a big hug right now, don't they? I love you, Wisdom Seekers. We'll join up here next time, same station, and I love you so.